Captain Britain is a superhero title used in Marvel Comics comic books, most commonly in conjunction with Excalibur. Captain Britain went black and white with issue number 24 and was cancelled with issue number 39, but the Captain Britain serial was immediately transferred to Marvel UK's Spider-Man comic, which was then retitled Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain. Britain is a complex character. Brian Braddock's life was planned for him before he was born. There's no similar thing as a concurrence for him. Merlyn transferred James Braddock to Earth 616 to conceive a champion suitable for defending the multiverse against the myriad pitfalls it faced. Brian was his third child. He grew up as a solitary child, piecemeal from his siblings, enthralled in books. Betsy Braddock, also known as Captain Britain, has returned from her time in the Otherworld and is now being transferred on a brand new charge in a recently blazoned limited series from Marvel. Betsy Braddock Captain Britain is a new 5-issue miniseries from pen Teenie Howard, artist Vasco Georgiev, and cover artist Erica Durso, which was blazoned during the Women of Marvel panel at New York Con. Betsy, a character created by Chris Claremont and Herb Trimpe, who rather showed up in 1976's Captain Britain number 8, has laid out the adultness of mutant kind's preceding Krakoan era in the Other World, a fun dimension in the Marvel Universe filled with dragons, witchery, and further that is also known as Avalon. While her family, Brian Braddock, was playing Captain Britain at the time, Betsy was called back in when Brian was held by Morgan le Fay. Betsy leads a complaint against the hostiles throughout Excalibur, a series that commenced in 2019. She works with King Arthur and Merlyn to strike down all the furries, also known as mutants from the Otherworld. Following Excalibur, Knights of X continued Braddock's trip through the Otherworld, as she and a platoon of icons, including Gambit, King Arthur's son Mordred, Shatterstar, Richter, and others, tried to reclaim the Siege Perilous. While Merlyn appeared to have killed Gambit along the way, he's reawakened in the series' final issue, Knights of X number 5, and the platoon successfully restores a working gate between the Otherworld and Krakoa. Meanwhile, Merlyn appears to be executed by Braddock after his forces are defeated in the final issue, though the exact moment of his death isn't shown on the runner. This was the fact Marvel attempted when it first presented Captain Britain to a skeptical British people in 1976. The character only came to life thanks to the end of British jester genius Alan Moore after several failed renewals. The Watchmen and V for Vendetta author signed this Cap into a surreal battle against fascism, and thanks to his own battle with Marvel, prevented us from seeing the story he was working on. Americans who haven't heard of Captain Britain should not be alarmed, neither should the majority of British people. In Marvel Jesters, the character now lives in a strange kind of half-reality. There is no one true Captain Britain. The title is passed around and repeatedly held by female icons, making Peggy Carter's assumption of the role less remarkable than you might think. At the same time, every one of Marvel's many worlds has a Captain Britain. They've formed a Captain Britain Corps to defend the multiverse. With the addition of Eruptions, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is officially erecting its own interpretation of Secret Wars, putatively taking cues from the 2015 interpretation of the series. In this procedure, the comic's interpretation played up a closer, complete fatigue of the multiverse, which supported demonstration of the narrative's authentic dimension. One of these incidents could be operated flawlessly in the MCU to introduce new characters at the same moment. The demise of the Captain Britain Corps in the run-up to Secret Wars could be an effective way to establish the full scope of the threat facing the MCU, as well as a fun way to introduce Captain Britain to the film universe. The Captain Britain Corps, first introduced in the Alan Moore, Alan Davis, and Steve Craddock story Judgment Day for Marvel UK's The Daredevils magazine, spent decades as one of Marvel's most powerful multiversal forces. Most realities in the Marvel multiverse have a Captain Britain, and they are all linked by the same Merlyn, who's actually considered a Nexus being. Merlyn and his daughter Roma formed an alliance between these different interpretations of the same concept, establishing a base in the mystical realm of the Otherworld. The Corps was assigned with safeguarding their world's interpretation of Britain and supporting the stabilization of the bulky Omniverse. In Utmost Realities, this champion is Brian Braddock, and they band together under the banner of the devious witch, Saturnine, despite the fact that their moralities, histories, and indeed biologies may differ greatly. For a moment, the Captain Britain Corps existed as a stable in the Marvel Universe, oftentimes catching the Earth-616 variant of the Idol and his Excalibur teammates. They indeed had a Spider-Man, Spider-UK among them. Captain Britain Corps has been restored in the core Marvel Universe thanks to Betsy Braddock, who took over her brother's position as Captain Britain, and a multiversal alliance of them is set to protect the greater multiverse. While Captain Britain has been long rumored for the MCU, he has yet to appear, and the multiverse-threatening events of Secret Wars are clearly coming for the MCU. This is in light of the incursions introduced in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as well as the announcement of Avengers Secret Wars. However, the loss of the Captain Britain Corps could serve as an excellent introduction to the true scope of the conflict. Captain Britain Corps could quickly become a multiversal defense force, with a newly recruited Brian or even Betsy joining their ranks just in time to witness, and narrowly escape, the conflict with the Ivory Kings. It would leave concepts like Otherworld open for storytelling, and without the stabilizing element of an established Captain Britain Corps to police it, making it an ideal location for future stories to explore. Captain Britain was latterly revealed to be a member of the Captain Britain Corps, which also includes multiple performances of Braddock and other characters similar to Captain England, Captain Albion, and Captain UK Merlyn, Roma, and Sir James Braddock innovated the platoon with the charge of guarding the multiverse against the mystical Eternity. It would be intriguing to see Captain Britain eventually appear as the cult begin to explore other realms and worlds in the MCU, whether it's just one Captain Britain or numerous. There are several possible paths for this character, one of which is a 6-occasion Disney show that explores Brian Braddock's origins while also looking at the larger world of the Corps itself. An indispensable path could be following the success of What If, a compilation show in which audiences are introduced to a new Captain Britain in each incident, conducting an eventual squad-up in the grand finale. The character could also appear in a number of other projects, such as a Black Knight, Kit Harington, or X-Men project, both of which are recent additions to the MCU and have ties to Captain Britain. Peggy Carter mentioned someone named Braddock in Avengers Endgame, implying that the character already exists. Because the scene takes place in the 1970s, it's possible that Agent Carter is referring to his father James rather than Brian, but either way, it's confirmation that the Braddock family has a history in the MCU and is already affiliated with S.H.I.E.L.D. The possibilities are truly endless, with Moon Knight head pen Jeremy Slater also expressing interest in conforming the Excalibur comics for Disney. Captain Britain is a character who must be played at the applicable time. It might not have worked if he'd been introduced in Phase 1. Still, following the release of Multiverse of Madness, Phase 4's multiverse saga is set up to be verily game-altering for the MCU. Captain Britain is the ideal companion to another researching it. According to FandomWire, Henry Cavill has decided which character he will play in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But rumors say that the Superman Hall of Fame has chosen to play Captain Britain's Brian Braddock in the MCU.